Good evening and welcome everyone to tonight's webinar on our Pillars of Financial Success series, Beating Debt and Building Financial Resilience. August is Money Month. At Enable Me, we've designed a webinar for every Wednesday this month. This is the first one. If you'd like to follow this series, take a look at our website for the links to the rest, which will cover mortgages, wealth creation, and retirement planning. Look, I want to acknowledge the time you've put aside tonight out of your busy week to pop along for this hour. For whatever reason, you've prioritised it above everything else you could have done this evening. Look, money isn't the most scintillating of topics. In most cases, it becomes front of mind when we find ourselves in a bit of a pickle, i.e., we don't have enough. In itself, not having enough is pretty common, but if you find yourself regularly in the position of having more month left than your money, that can be stressful. It can turn into a debt spiral, and it can be really hard to exit from. Tonight, we're going to unpack why beating down debt sooner can accelerate your financial position and build a solid foundation for choices around creating wealth in the future. Why is that important, you ask? Well, you're ambitious with your finances. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here tonight. I do have one favour to ask of you. Don't lose sight of the reason that you joined us this evening. If there's one takeaway I'd like you to have, it's this. Take an action, however small, after tonight that takes you closer towards your financial goals and vision that you've set for yourself. It could be anything from starting an emergency savings account to asking for a pay increase. It could be as simple as having a conversation with your partner on aligning your money goals, or just asking for help if you're stuck in a bit of a money rut. And to help you with that action, we also have a special giveaway tonight. One of you in my audience, live with me tonight, will win a consultation with one of our amazing coaches valued at $400. We'll be drawing the lucky winner at the close of the webinar before we get into the Q&A section. We're also going to have a special offer for those of you who don't win to have one of those sessions with our coaches also at a reduced price. So stick around. We've got a lot to get through tonight, so let's get into it. So a bit about me. I'm a financial coach and advisor here at Enable Me. This is what I do. In terms of my background, I've had 25 years plus in financial services. I'm a property investor and infill developer. I've been doing that for over 20 years. I'm a business owner, but at the heart of it, I'm a seeker just like you of financial freedom, whatever that means for you. Over the years, I've been intrigued by all things money. I was that kid at primary school that was counting out my change from my lunch order that eventually led me into a banking career, from retail banking right through to financial markets and private banking. While banking was a great foundation for me, I soon discovered it was pretty impossible to get ahead with a day job. And in my 20s, I was introduced to the power of leverage through property investment to accelerate my wealth creation. And since then, I haven't really looked back. I've had my fair share of life's curveballs thrown at me. And because of this, when it comes to my finances, I have one principle: to be financially independent and stand on my own 2 feet. That means independent of my life partner, the government, my employer. In the absence of all of them, I can continue to live a comfortable life. So this is the principle that drives me today. I hope that I can share with you some of the hacks that have kind of taken me over 25 years odd to refine, so you can shortcut your way through my learnings. So just a bit of a disclaimer, our usual one. This information tonight is general in nature. If you want to get some advice on your personal situation, then you'll need to engage with a financial advisor of your choice. So what are we going to cover? We're going to cover, why do we go into debt? We are going to talk about harnessing your money personality and habits for success. We're going to be talking about finding that cash surplus, however elusive it might be, and practical tips to get your money working harder for you. Those little wins along the way in terms of the little dollars and cents that we save can really add up to some big changes. So we're going to talk about how we do that. We're going to do the draw just before the Q&A, and then we'll take as many questions as we can after that. So we're going to run a wee poll here, and this poll is going to be asking you, you'll see it pop up on your screen, which of the following types of short-term debt have you used before? So out of buy now, pay later, like an afterpay type arrangement, do you have a credit card? Have you used that previously? Payday loans, and payday loans are those ones that typically are for a short period. So you take them out and they generally charge you quite a high interest rate, and then you pay them off the next time that you get paid your wage or salary. Car loans, personal loans, overdrafts, and hire purchase agreements. So just give you a wee minute to tick one of those boxes, and then we will take a look at what the numbers look like, and that will just help me to be able to direct my presentation a bit more accurately. Right. Okay, so 81% of us have a credit card. That does not surprise me at all. No one's doing payday loans, and pretty equal between buy now, pay later and car loans and personal loans, and followed by overdrafts. Okay, so that's really interesting information. We're going to be talking a little bit about credit cards later on. So why do we need to reduce our short-term debt? Well, look at these statistics. 55% of Kiwis worry about money daily or weekly. 45% could not access $5,000 within 1 week in case of emergency. 42% of New Zealanders have credit card debt, the old credit card, and 31% of us have buy now, pay later debt. Look, we know we've come out of a historic time of high interest rates and high inflation. But look, also historically, we've pretty much been terrible savers. And it's one reason actually why KiwiSave was brought in to address the gap in retirement savings. But building some financial resilience is really essential to our plan. Having an emergency fund so that we can draw on that in case anything crops up, because life is not static. It throws up curveballs out of nowhere. It could be a job loss, it could be your car blowing up, it could be a myriad of things. Do you have the ability to deal with that? And typically what I would recommend to my clients is that we have at least 3 to 6 months of annual expenses put aside in some kind of accessible fund that you can draw on in case of an emergency. And that's not just at, the later end of your life as well. We need this at all stages of life, because we certainly know that life can happen at any time. It's also pretty easy to get into debt, right? It's almost become really accepted in terms of the way that we do things. There's plenty of organisations out there who are more than happy to help you part with your money. Part of that really great business model that sits behind them really smooths the pathway and removes obstacles that can really stand in the way of getting that additional sale from you. They'll grab you at 9 p.m. when you've finally made it to the couch, you've had a terrible day, you've just got the kids to bed, and you want that instantaneous gratification of buying that little something that pops up in your Facebook feed or Instagram feed or whatever it is. What I'd like to introduce to you is the concept of delayed gratification, foregoing that temptation to then look to perhaps a larger or more enduring benefit in the future by not getting the click and grab and shop on your credit card. Look, we know there's also, we call it the cost of living crisis, but I perhaps also propose to you that perhaps it's more of a spending crisis that we've got. One thing at the bottom I'd like to point out is that influencer culture there. Social media is really, really good at highlighting the problems that you have that you didn't realize that you had, and then giving you a solution for that problem, which usually results in you ending up whipping out the credit card. So debt can be a real problem, right? Just because it's common doesn't mean it's helping you out. Generally speaking, if you've got some debt in place, it's highlighting to us that we're not very in control of our money. And as soon as we start getting that debt on, it eats into our available cash flow. We get charged interest for the privilege, and it can stand in the way of us really having those choices available to us to do other things like get a mortgage, for example. What if that extra $10,000 per year in surplus that you could generate could translate into an additional $100,000 in mortgage finance that you could access? And quite often credit card debt and other short-term debt can really stand in the way of that next step, which might be onto the property ladder as an example. And obviously, look, if we've also had defaults and we're not managing our money properly, then credit becomes much harder to access as well. So it's not about where we're starting, it's all about your trajectory. Where do you start? I'd suggest today, now, we put a line in the sand. Whatever went before is done. What matters more is what you do next. You may have been perhaps in a debt cycle for quite some time, or perhaps you've newly found yourself in this position. And sometimes it can be associated with a bit of shame as well around having that debt. I'm more interested in what your capability of is and where we're heading to. So in terms of financial success, that means different things for different people. For some people, it might be just starting to save because they've never saved before. For some, it might be saving up to buy the new car or taking a holiday. For some, it's being able to be generous and to be able to help out their family. The real key to the financial success part is, I think, harnessing time, because the longer we have to prepare, the less risk we have to take, and the more comfortable our lifestyle is, both now and also into the future, and ultimately, our golden years as well. So getting out of debt, it's hard, it's challenging, but it's not impossible. So what are your options? And that really depends on your situation. First step, we have suggested rip the Band-Aid off. Do not bury your head in the sand. Lean into the problem, full throttle. And if you don't have perhaps the nous or the skill to be able to deal with it yourself, now's the time to be asking for some help. And what we're going to be going through is how we can possibly look at restructuring your debt to reduce the interest costs. So say, for example, you might have a credit card that's charging you at 20%. One option for you could be a balance transfer. So we could look at that. If you've got a myriad of different types of debt, perhaps a debt consolidation, bringing everything into one simple repayment, might be really helpful for you. Look, it might be scary, but I'd suggest that a starting point is the most important thing. Just stare that debt right in the eye. Put it into a spreadsheet. Have a look at what's your biggest debt, what's the highest interest rate that you're paying. Now we can really start to form the bones of a strategy. So what are balance transfers? Essentially, we've got capability in terms of service offerings in the market at the moment to transfer credit card debt from one card to a card with a different provider, and then access a low or a zero interest rate on that new card. So the advantages of that for you are that you're paying less interest on the balance outstanding. So that's a massive benefit. The disadvantages to that are that it's usually just an interest rate on that transferred balance, and you might have a specific period of time to pay down that balance as well. It might be, say, limited for 6 months. Typically only for credit card debt, and obviously you need to go through an application process for that. Other option, debt consolidation. So this will also still require an application process. Sometimes we just need to get rid of multiple loans in order to give us a bit more brain space to be able to deal with that next step. The trick, though, with debt consolidation is to be really careful with your loan term. What I mean by that is you don't want to end up with a longer loan term, which in turn leads you to actually have paid more interest overall on the debt. So there's a right way and there's a wrong way to take on debt consolidation. Sometimes there might be fees involved. It depends on the provider that you're going through. You typically have to commit to a fixed repayment and a fixed term. And obviously, if you've also had problems in the past with defaults or your credit score, this might not be an available option for you. So let's take a sidestep for the minute and talk about where your money is going, because perhaps we can also improve our situation in a different way by looking at the money that we're frittering currently. And top of the list there is bank fees. And I know that's topical at the moment because we've just seen that PayWave fees and credit card fees will be abolished in May next year. So that is coming, that is great, and it's going to make a massive difference. It's also a pain-free way for you to be saving some extra money. We estimate that on the whole, Kiwis fritter about 15% of their income on these things that we've listed out here. And I can say from experience with my clients that that is absolutely on the money. Typically, most people tend to overspend in that food and alcohol space. We've added coffees in there because, they can really add up if you're doing multiple coffees per week. Another couple of things that trip people up are the subscriptions that you forget to cancel, or like gym memberships. And for me, that was always a thing. I go to the gym for 6 months and then the rest of the year is kind of wasted because I'm locked in. Absolutely, in terms of mortgage structure, there are ways that we can save money in that space. Most Kiwis would say, by getting a really good interest rate, I'm going to get ahead. Absolutely. You can save a lot of money that way. You can save thousands of dollars that way. But I'd also propose to you that the optimal mortgage structure can save you hundreds of thousands rather than just thousands. A big one for a lot of my clients is inefficient insurances, and that could be personal risk insurance or general insurance. It could be the car that you sold and forgot to cancel the car insurance, as an example. Utilities, again, that's one where you might not have reviewed your utilities and gone to a website, something like Power Switch, and checked out if you're paying a competitive rate for your power, and obviously interest payments. So how do we find it, and what does that look like, and how does it add up? And absolutely, the smallest change can make the biggest difference if you're applying it to several different categories. I mean, if you take a look at this, these are small weekly savings, but by the time they add up to what we've got here, $144 per week, that can be nearly $7,500 per year. So, what could we be doing with that $7,500? What is the opportunity cost of that money going towards all of that fritter that we could be using to perhaps pay down the mortgage or pay down our debt, as an example, just by having a little bit of structure and a little bit of focus on the expenses that we have got, those, the money that's coming out of our bank account really regularly. So we could also look at it from the other perspective. We could focus on getting more money in rather than focus on the money going out. And we've got some suggestions here. Some of them might be sort of one-off cash injections that we use to decrease debt really quickly. Others, for example, like upskilling, they're more of a slow burn. You have to perhaps do a little bit of education first in order to improve your salability in a workplace. Not all of them are going to be possible for you, and not all that are possible will be appealing to you either. But, this might not be forever. This might be temporary for you. And sometimes we just need to dig a little bit into that debt to get it really decreasing and give ourselves some traction. Look, we've also put in other things like spare room, get a boarder, a student. Airbnb, obviously super popular now and a great platform to utilize that. And look, so many ways. I guess the main focus here is, are you seeking something else? Are you looking at additional ways or side hustles that you can bring in some additional funds that will target that short-term debt for you much quicker than the cadence that you're currently operating at? So there's a few strategies that I want to go through. We're going to look at two, the snowball strategy and the avalanche strategy, in terms of ways that we're going to attack that debt. So we're going to go into them now. The snowball method is the method whereby we attack the debt with the lowest balance first. So this can really work with human psychology, because if we're able to attack it and get rid of it, then that can really give us an immense amount of satisfaction. We can then apply the repayment from that debt into increasing repayments on the next debt that we attack. So it builds a whole lot of motivation by seeing that debt cleared quite quickly, and obviously things speed up, just like a snowball going down a hill. We gain a lot of momentum by starting with the smallest balance, and that is the key, to start with the smallest balance. So in terms of who this might work for, it may not perhaps work for a shopper personality, it might work better for a shopper personality that needs those wins to keep motivated. However, if we look at the con of that, it may incur more interest because that debt might have a high interest rate attached to it. So if we then look at the avalanche method in terms of how that works, this really works. I guess you would call this more of a marathon than a sprint at the start, but it really pays off long term. So what we're doing with the avalanche method is we're attacking the debt with the highest interest first, and that will minimize the overall total debt that you pay. It really suits people who love efficiency and who are really into calculating the best way to reduce interest cost. So savers would love this because they're great at staying the course with this type of method. Downside of this one is that it can take longer to see progress, which in turn can then impact your motivation around it, because it's slow at the start Once it gathers some momentum, then, you're away, and it can be quicker because you're paying less interest overall. So it really depends on you in terms of your personality and the way that you want to attack things as to which method's going to work the best for you. We talk a lot about mindset and behaviors here at Enable Me, their role in getting and staying out of debt. Typically, the behaviors and mindset that got you into debt are not the behaviors and mindset that will get you out of debt. So, where did you learn your habits? Did you learn them from your family? Were your mum and dad good with money, or were they not so good? Do you do by habit what they did, or are you going completely the opposite way? We typically tend to have those ingrained habits that we learn by osmosis from the upbringing that we've had, generally from our close friends and family in the, quite early parts of our life. That obviously is going to drive our decisions and behaviors now, and that in turn is going to determine your progress. So if you haven't identified what drives your habits or how to make changes, absolutely seek help from someone who can help you to do that. 9 out of 10 of our clients are completely unaware of what their capability is. And that can come back to the beliefs that might be holding you back, that are inherent in everything that you do with money. Most people don't know what they don't know. Most people don't want to shine a light into those dark corners for fear of what actually might be lurking there. And that can become, again, quite ingrained. I'll never get ahead unless I get more money. I'll never escape a cycle of short-term debt. The universe will just sort things out for me. And those assumptions can be quite damaging because they can result in you not taking action, which is the opposite of what we want you to be doing. So let's talk about the Joneses, probably showing my age a little bit here. The Joneses is that analogy of the neighbors next door. They've got 2.5 kids, the perfect family, the dog, the cat, the shiny new car, and they just look so together. However, nobody realizes that the Joneses are mortgaged to the hilt. Mrs. Jones was the breadwinner but has just been laid off, and Mr. Jones is addicted to online gambling. And I think that really social media these days have highlighted that we do look next door often at what other people have, but we just really don't know what their situation is. So what's the answer? It's not just about earning more money. It's an absolute fallacy that if you earn more, you're better off. And I can tell you that from experience working with clients. It's all about how much you've got left over at the end of your pay cycle, because that is where the power lies. Typically, what we tend to find is the more that people earn, the more they spend. We call that lifestyle creep. Essentially, just keep on upgrading your lifestyle over time. So we're going to go into a little bit more about the surplus later on. In terms of creating a really good money fit mindset, we think that there's some core pillars to that. Knowing stuff about money is super helpful, absolutely, but also is knowing yourself and your tendencies, and then understand what you're trying to achieve moving forward. So not so much about the financial literacy piece, but about understanding you and your relationship with money. Strategy is around making a plan around, what it is that you want to achieve. And we know that when it comes to success, that It's more, there's an 80-20 rule, 20% strategy and then 80% behavior. So it's all about doing the thing. You know, it's all very well to come up with a plan, but actually rolling it out. Having some systems in place that are going to keep you on task and on point. They actually take the hard work out of doing what you're doing. And then having some accountability as well. So once you've got everything in place, do we have accountability? Firstly, with ourselves, right? We're looking at ourselves in the mirror via our system, looking at the numbers and going, that is actually what I spend on clothes per month, as an example. But also it might be accountability with your life partner. It might be to an advisor. It could be to the friend that you catch up every week for coffee with. If you are struggling with that debt part, then we do need to improve our financial literacy, or we need to ask for help from someone who can assist in that space. Yeah, so it's very helpful to understand money. 57% of New Zealanders do not consider themselves to be financially literate. But it's not just knowledge, as I've been pointing out. It's all about your money beliefs and your starting point. And it's actually about your habits as well. It's all about starting and being consistent, but being able to be consistent over a period of time, usually a long period of time. And I do say to people, if you haven't done a thing before, then it's all about creating that muscle memory. So we just want to flex that muscle. We want to start, and we want to start small if we need to. And then we start leveraging that up as we're starting to see some success with that new habit that we've created for ourselves. So we need to understand a few things. We use a lot of these money personalities, cash positions, and tendencies to help you understand who you are and what your relationship to money is. So starting with money personality, are you a shopper or a saver, or are you somewhere in between? I can tell you right now, I am a shopper through and through. And what does that mean? That means I love the big, shiny, lofty goals that will give me a big reward, and I will move heaven and earth to get them. But if you're asking me to give up my coffee, forget it. That is not going to happen. Whereas with a saver, look, they tend to be reasonably conservative, love to see their savings balances go up, love to see the debt come down. They're really comfortable saving. They'd prefer to do that rather than spend. In terms of that cash position part, this is also really important, like identifying actually where you are. What's your starting point? What does it look like right now? We'd say that if you've got short-term debt and it's not a one-off, that it's a regular occurrence for you, you're probably in that sinking category where money in, money out, there's a negative balance at the end of the day. Floating, you're kind of comfortable. You're kind of floating along, but you're not really getting anywhere of note. And flying, I would usually say your cash flow is good, you've got a surplus, and if you're flying, if I could put a number again against it, I'd say flying is saving about, let's say 20% of your net income. On top of that, we also have risk tendencies, like what is your risk appetite? So a safety warden, that's someone quite conservative who doesn't like to take a whole lot of risk and therefore doesn't also get the return back from that. Likes to stick perhaps more with savings accounts rather than a managed fund, as an example. An adventurer often takes crazy, unsustainable, undiversified risk, and oftentimes does well, but more often than not also crashes and burns. And then the last one, the dreamer. The dreamer is typically quite unrealistic and thinks that the universe will provide for them. So understanding all of these in terms of your money personality will give you a starting point and allow us to put in place a plan that's going to leverage off our strengths and also provide a system and process for our weak points. So what problem are we solving for when it comes to goals? We need to understand what your vision is. We need to understand the size of the gap that we're solving for. Are we just wanting to get out of debt and stay out of debt? Are we wanting to save for that first home? Are we wanting to repay our mortgage faster? Or are we at the other end of the scale and looking to create that comfortable retirement? One thing that all of these have in common is that you're going to need to have some cash left over at the end of each pay cycle to be able to actually get ahead with any of those goals. And then there's, of course, the old acronym of goal setting. Is it SMART? Is it specific in terms of the goal you're setting yourself? Is it measurable? I need to save a $50,000 deposit for a home, as an example. Is it achievable to you? Is it relevant to your situation and not just somebody else's goal? And is it time bound? Are you giving yourself a specific period of time for it? And we love the saying here, a goal without a plan is just a wish. A plan is a roadmap that really helps you to stay on track when your humanness is challenged. It reminds you of the importance of your goal. It rewards you when you reach milestones, and it ensures that you're consistent in terms of the progress that you're making towards those financial goals. So 56% of us don't feel financially prepared for retirement, which is a crazy number. Look, a plan itself doesn't need to be complex, but it's helpful if it's first of all written down and second of all, it's reviewed. It's as simple as, in terms of a starting point, as first having a spending plan, being able to isolate where the money's going in terms of categories, i.e. what expenses are, what's the proportion that we're spending on food? What's the proportion that we're spending on power? And then we want to use that plan to be able to then track financial progress. So essentially, it's the thing that helps make us feel in control of the process, and that in turn reduces financial stress. Because essentially we set the plan and then we just follow the plan, knowing that the plan is going to get us to our goal and having trust in that. Look, I know also that a lot of perhaps younger people in the audience might not be thinking about retirement now, but let me tell you, it's much more helpful to know what your gap is at age 30 than it is at age 50, because you've then got far more time to be able to do something about it. And it's more about just doing that check-in. Am I on track or do I need to course correct? So a spending plan helps you to focus your spending and ensures your money makes a difference. How do we define a spending plan? We've got a starting position. We want to understand where we're going, where we want to get to, and we also want to understand the time frame that we've got to get there. It might be we're saving to buy a car, we need to save $20,000. We want to buy the car in 5 years' time. How much do we need to save incrementally from our pay every fortnight? So a really good spending plan helps you to define what you value most, to then prioritize it and then enjoy it without the guilt. And we are all about here having a spending plan that gives you your best life, that includes the things in it that are really important. It's everything that's left over that we want to get really working productively for you. So we've Split our spending into three broad categories here. The essentials are basically what we need to keep the lights on, food on the table. They are the basics, roof over our head. We're paying for the power and the water rates, all of that kind of stuff. The second category, non-essentials, is more of that discretionary spending. We can choose to spend on that or not. What's then left over is the surplus or our savings. The surplus is super important and also number one pillar in terms of the pillars that sit behind all of our programs, because savings are the engine room of wealth creation. What you can save will directly influence your ability to invest and then create more wealth. So I'll say that again, the surplus is the engine room of wealth creation. That's why we bang on about it so much. It's really important, number one pillar in terms of your ability to create wealth. So big changes start with small steps. So I would propose to you that you can have anything, but you can't have everything. And what that means is we need to prioritize sometimes where we're putting the money and where we want to save money. But those little savings can end up being a bit of a sacrifice. We take those funds and we put it towards something that's actually more important to us, that's a priority to us. So we've traded it out because, we've saved some money on our meal prep, but actually now we're going on holiday in a year's time. We've now created our best life because we've prioritized what we want to be spending our money on. So importantly, I think, is to have really good systems in place. And we know that this has been a really challenging time when it comes to job security. 41% of us think their disposable income will fall in the next year. And if you're one of those people, you're in the unfortunate position of losing your job, wouldn't it be empowering to understand actually what life costs you so you can lean into how long your savings are going to last you? You've actually got a really accurate gauge on what life costs. It might not be a flamboyant life, but at least you can pay the bills. Most of us understand what our power costs, but perhaps not what we spent on fast food last year or on clothing. So it's suggesting that having a great system and tracking your spending is a no-brainer. And also having systems around automatic payments so you don't miss out on bills, etc. If you follow James Clear, we absolutely do. He has a saying, you don't rise to the level of your goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So again, take the humanness out, we have a system to support the plan that we've put in place. So the most important thing here is getting really aware of how our money flows. So we can find inconsistencies or themes within our spending. So we can get rid of unnecessary bank fees. So we can then make informed choices, which will in turn see us make progress towards our financial goals. So tracking your expenses really helps you identify where you can save more. It's basically data mining and giving you feedback so that you can then apply that in terms of being informed on your decision making going forward. So if you want to get started, you don't have to go the whole hog buying fancy systems. You can just start with a simple spreadsheet. And this one is an example of our free resource, our cash controller spreadsheet, which is available on our website, I believe. And literally cash in, cash out, what's left over. That's what we want to determine. We now know at what speed our savings cadence will land. So take a look at that. It's a really great free resource that we've got. We've talked about accountability. I think it's really important. I tend to find that if you're looking at your numbers, it's like a mirror back to you. So it's hitting you straight in the face with pure black and white what you're spending every year, but also super helpful that you know you're not journeying alone. So if you're doing this with your partner, accountability between each of you. And then obviously, if you've got an advisor, that's an additional level of accountability as well. And where possible, we're all busy, right? We don't have time for messing around with transferring everywhere. We just want to automate stuff. So if we automate by using auto payments, direct debits, etc., and then we track so that we then get the feedback on what is going in and out of our accounts. And just some suggestions on who you might use for your accountability partners, friends, family members, financial advisors. So it's more about telling people what your goals are so they can then ask you, how are you tracking with that? I'm certainly not saying when it comes to financial advice, go and talk to the barbecue committee on managed funds. That's not what I'm suggesting. But it's more around having someone to bounce back to you. You said you were going to do this. How's that going for you right now? Are you on target? So don't want you to wait to feel confidence around money, because the results in turn will give you the confidence. It's the lack of action that saps it. How can we help you? So I introduced myself as being a fellow financial freedom seeker. Unequivocally, the things that got me ahead were mindset and action. If you don't know where to begin, your first action might be asking for help. In terms of what an Enable Me coach does, we just help you to be better. We highlight how much capability that you've got that you're not tapping into. We'll help you pay down that mortgage faster in terms of some options around how we structure it to optimize it. Yes, we're going to give you that accountability piece. Yes, we're going to help establish a wealth plan and give you some opportunities, and then point out any opportunity costs of what you're currently doing. We're going to give you confidence to be able to take those actions, and just, rather than sitting there thinking about what you're going to do, we'll do a thing in action to take you one step ahead. And then we'll provide you some ongoing support as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got a couple of offers for you, and they are for a financial consultation with one of our coaches here at Enable Me. A financial consultation is 90 minutes. It is value packed. It will get you off the starting block and really highlight where to focus your effort to get ahead faster with money and your wealth creation plan. So we'll give you a bit of a rough sketch of your of a financial plan, the beginnings, I would say, of a blueprint for your future. We're going to do that by taking a full picture of your finances, your balance sheet, your spending, cash in, cash out, and surplus. We're going to talk about your debt, your mindset, your goals, etc. And then we're going to look at where there might be some inefficiencies within your current situation. Then we're going to look into, well, where are we sitting in terms of the trajectory you're currently on? We're going to look at that default position you've landed in versus what you might potentially gain from a financial plan. So you'll also get a summary of an action plan that's tailored to you after the session. And then after that first consultation, you do have options to continue with us on longer programs, but again, no obligation to do that with us if it doesn't feel right for you. So we do provide a whole heap of value and actionable steps from this first consultation. Of course, I highly recommend it. And this is our team, a crew of expert money hackers, qualified financial advisors who have really walked the talk. And there's, as you can see, quite a few of us based around the country. So we've got a bit of an offer for you tonight. We're going to do the draw very shortly, but for those of you who don't win the draw, because there's only one person that can win, we do have this amazing deal, which is our consultations are usually valued at $400, but for everyone on the call tonight, we'll offer you a great deal at $149 if you book tonight before midnight. If you book after midnight, then the cost is $249. So we are going to do the draw now, but I'll come and land back on this page. Amelia, would you like to announce to us from your random selector who has won our promotion tonight?
Yes, our lucky winner is Tristan Blenor. So congratulations. We will email you after the webinar. And then
Fantastic.
yep. And now onto the Q&A.
Amazing. Yes, thank you. Congratulations, Kristen. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll give you all the details to get in touch with us to book that first consultation. Let's move on to some Q&A. What have you got for me, Amelia?
So thank you to everyone who submitted questions. The first question, do you have any tips for changing bad spending habits?
Just stop it. Look, I think we need to stop. We need to put that line in the sand. We need to understand what's really important to us. And we need to figure out, well, is what I'm doing supporting me getting closer towards the thing that's really important to me? And I know that with my clients, in the absence of the plan, for anyone actually, we just keep doing what we've always done. So part of what feeds into bad spending habits is we haven't taken stock of our money personality and our tendencies in terms of that buying decision. So that's a really important place to start. Why are we spending? Why do we have bad habits? Lean into that a little bit further. So I would also suggest that by tracking those habits and have them reflected back to you so you can see those. Typically, if you add them up over a year, it's super scary, right? So do that because it can really help for you to get feedback on actually what you're doing in terms of the cost of it. And then, look, of course, I'd love to have a chat to you because we want to understand what the opportunity cost of what you're doing is, and then also show you the benefits of if we get that money working really hard, then, that can be quite motivating.
Thank you, Kirsty. My next question, should you pay off your credit card before you save or go for a balanced approach? I feel like we are on a vicious cycle where we don't have a lot of debt but can't dig ourselves out, so we never save much either.
Yeah, and I guess the first question I'd ask is why do we have credit card debt? Because that would typically indicate to me that we're not living within our means. So money in, money out, are we in a deficit? Hence why we're going directly to the credit card to basically top up our lifestyle. And always when I see short-term debt, particularly credit card use, that can indicate to me that you are living outside your means. I know that a lot of people use their credit cards in order to get points or, loyalty dollars or whatever you get from, that your credit card company encourages you to spend more. A credit card's use is really the way it should be used is that every month it gets repaid. So if that balance that is lingering on your credit card, then that's not ideal because you're then paying 17 to 20% interest on it. I would say if you've got credit card debt and it's got a high interest rate, which I imagine it probably does, then that would be a target in terms of prioritizing paying that down first, because that's going to stop you from doing a whole lot extra. You're also going to be paying a whole lot of interest towards whoever your provider is that would be better placed in your back pocket.
Thanks, Kirsty. We had a great question just come in. Can you recommend a good tool or app to track your outgoings automatically?
Well, of course, I can recommend our MoneyFit Tracker app, which is amazing. And that is one that has been built by us, super easy to use, super easy to download. You have it on your phone. You can reconcile it really simply. It should probably only take you 10 minutes per week. Yeah, amazing application to use. I use it myself and have found it super helpful in terms of getting that feedback on my expenses.
Thank you. Anyone who's interested about the Money Fit Tracker, please do email us. We love hearing questions about that.
Mm.
Another question that has just come in is someone who said that they hear from some well-off people that there is good debt and want to ask at what stage of your financial position should you have good debt? I think they want to understand a little bit more what good debt is.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is good debt and bad debt, or good debt and unproductive debt. And typically, I'd class most short-term consumer debt to be non-productive debt. I would I would say also, though, that, for example, if you really need a car, it's important because you've expanded your family. It's a tool to you being able to live your life, and we don't quite have the funds, then sometimes that's necessary, right? But when we talk about productive debt, we're talking about potentially buying our first home or perhaps investing into an investment property. That can be really productive debt, but even between purchasing a home and investment property, there's a difference. So we know that by getting onto the property ladder, that can help us to create wealth, absolutely. But we also know that we have the choice these days between buying our own home, or perhaps we have the choice of rent vesting, where we rent where we want to rent and then we invest somewhere else. The debt that we use to be able to buy that investment property is actually far more productive, and that's what we call leverage. So we're able to leverage our money in order to buy a bigger asset, which then is working super hard for us in terms of being quite tax efficient and essentially with that debt that we've got against the investment property, I would say that's probably the most productive debt that we're going to have because it will accelerate your wealth creation journey. So yes, there are many different shades of grey when it comes to the difference between productive and non-productive debt.
All right, I think that should be our last question, since we're already over time. Thanks, Kirsty. Sorry we didn't get to everyone's questions, but if you have any questions about our financial consultations or about our MoneyFit Tracker app, please feel free to give us a call or email us. Our contact information is on our website. Yeah, I'll hand it back to you to close off.
Well, thanks everyone. It has been a delight to chat with you tonight. I hope you've got something out of tonight's webinar. absolutely encourage you to, if you want some additional help, if you want to come and have a session with any of us here at Enable Me, to click the QR code, or you can go through to the link enable.me/beat-get. Unfortunately, for the people who didn't win tonight, at least you're getting that amazing discount. I look forward to seeing you. Have a fantastic evening.